Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I hope this finds you in good health. My name is Alexandra and I'm the webinar hostess, which means I'll be handling all of the questions and answers. This session is being recorded and will be made available to all attendees should you care to listen to it again or share it with colleagues. If you're having trouble hearing us, try connecting again with the computer audio or your phone audio. You may just need to flip the audio panel over. Today, we're going to be talking about the 5 W's of What's Up Gold. So the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. Then we'll go over a live demo with Mark, who is our key presenter here, and we'll do a live Q&A. So with that, I will pass it over to you, Mark.
All right, thank you, Alex. So we'll start with the jump right into the who. So who relies on What's Up Gold? This product is been around for quite a few years, What's Up Gold, and it's been used by defense contractors, our military. We have them installed on Navy ships, Army installations and so forth, as well, your civilian, small to medium-sized businesses, local government, schools, systems, colleges, etc., hospitals. So it's a wide array of various demographics that use the product and rely on it for their network monitoring needs. So what is What's Up Gold? It is an on-prem solution that will install on-prem, but it can monitor devices on premises and in the cloud like Azure or AWS, Amazon. The key things to remember about What's Up Gold, it is agentless. So there aren't any agents to install on your monitored systems. It comes with its own SQL Server database. So this data is not stored elsewhere in the cloud or wherever. It has its own centralized SQL Server database that it will install. Now you have the option to use your own full SQL Server if you wanted to. This could be done during the installation process, or post-installation, you could point it at your own Microsoft SQL Server. It has a robust discovery engine that will automatically discover all your layer 2, layer 3 devices on your network. And what that means for your network is you'll be able to gain visibility into what connected devices are out there. You'll be able to see things like bottlenecks and so on your network using this type of discovery, using a protocol like SNMP, as well as dependencies. And dependencies are basically what you will use to rely on to prevent things like alert storms and so on. So it automatically detects what devices are dependent upon gateway devices, for example, so that if one of those devices were to go down, that any devices behind it whatsoever is not going to be able to, or it's not going to pull those devices and cause a bunch of alerts and so on because they're no longer reachable. You can monitor things like application performance. We're talking SQL performance, Exchange, Oracle database. You could run SQL queries and so forth. So various applications are available in the application profile library in the product out of the box that you could set up monitoring for. Obviously with SNMP for your network devices, you can monitor bandwidth consumption, network interface utilization, interface traffic information, you can monitor that. Cloud-based resources, as I mentioned, AWS, Azure resources, you can set up performance monitoring on those devices as well. Then there are network performance information that you could track with protocols like NetFlow, for example, or JFlow or SFlow, or any variations of NetFlow. You could do traffic analysis to see what is happening on your network. But it also discovers and monitor virtual environments like Hyper-V and VMware. And then there's discovery of wireless networks. So one of the things that you might be interested in monitoring for wireless is what clients or how many clients are connected. Are there rogue devices on your wireless networks? These reporting and so forth can go out there and find that information. Bottom line is this: anything with an IP address, What's Up Gold is able to monitor. Now, using some of the protocols we're going to talk about here when we get into the demo, you could go deeper than beyond just pinging an IP address to see the status of a device. As I mentioned, the discovery will discover and map layer 2 devices such as routers, switches, servers, access point, wireless controls, and so forth. And then it will generate these network maps for your infrastructure. So what we will see here later on as we do the demo, you're going to see a layer 2 groups that WhatsUp will create based upon their roles, whether it's cloud or network or wireless, etc. You'll see those in the WhatsUp Gold demo. Using WhatsUp Gold, you could continuously monitor for the availability and performance of your infrastructure of routers, switches, and firewalls. So WhatsUp Gold has various monitor types. There are two monitors called active and performance, and then there's another called passive. Well, the active and performance monitors, what they do, they have a cycle, a polling frequency that they use to go out and monitor to see the availability or to collect data for performance analysis from all your network gear, your routers, switches, firewalls, and so on. But it can do the same thing for your Windows devices, Unix devices, and so on. As I mentioned, anything with an IP address can be monitored, including virtual machines. And what it will do, it will use standard protocols like ICMP, SNMP, WMI, and SSH to connect and monitor depending on what it is that you're monitoring in these devices. There is monitoring for cloud resources as well, and there are reportings that come with these so that you could track things like billing or performance information on those resources as well. Now, it comes with an easy to customize reporting environment. So WhatsUp Gold has its own standard reporting out of the box, but you could also create drag and drop dashboards. So using the existing information that WhatsUp collect via reporting logs, etc., you could create your own customized dashboards. You could use the reporting as well to track real-time performance monitors. And allow you to see on the spot what type of performance you're experiencing. Maybe it's a high memory utilization you're tracking down on a certain device. And then, of course, there are things like inventory reporting. What are the software installed in your environment? Or give me a report of all my connected devices. You'll see this type of information in the reporting inventory section. Now let's talk about when. It can be rapidly deployed in networks in combat zones. WhatsUp Gold does not require internet access to be deployed, so it might be in an isolated, tightly controlled environment that is locked down, and you could deploy the product, install it on a virtual machine or a standard desktop using a Windows Server 2016, 2012, etc. So it requires a server class operating system for better performance, but that one server will serve as the monitoring tool. So as I mentioned earlier, there aren't any agents or anything to install elsewhere. Once we have everything like credentials and so forth to monitor these devices, you can monitor everything on a 24/7 basis, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And since it monitors anything with an IP address, it could be a mixture of networks, servers, virtual machines, applications, traffic flows, and so on. It'll be able to monitor all of those environments. Now, let's talk about where. So as I mentioned, it can be in tightly controlled environments. It has the option for online activation as well as offline activation. So let's say you don't have access to the internet, which is understandable in many of the military federal type installations. You have the option of doing an offline activation to get the product up and running. And then there's end-to-end view of your IT environment through continuously monitoring. And you want to use those obviously to fix problems before they impact your end users. Another thing is it is vendor agnostic. So you might see in my environment, you might see a lot of Cisco and so on, but really it is vendor agnostic. All we need is an IP address, and then to go further, something like SNMP or WMI to monitor other types of manufacturers. And here's the why. So WhatsUp Gold can automate configuration and change management for routers, switches, and firewalls. So if you want to do configuration compliance, the product has the tool to do it. It can archive and audit your network configurations. When there's any changes in your network devices or configurations, you could be alerted on them. And the configuration changes to the network can degrade network performance. So that is why you want to be able to track this type of information. When it happens, be alerted. And then we do policy audits on your devices as well. And then you want to make sure using these that you're not experiencing any issues and compromise of your network security. So it is a tool to stay on top of things, whether the device is online or whether it's the configuration is being backed up continuously and securely, and whether the devices are meeting any of the policy requirement like HIPAA, SOX, PCI, and FISMA. You have all of those that it's going to query and check when it runs its configuration task against those devices. So with the anything with an IP address and more, it will discover the network using IP ranges, and then it will discover all the ports that are active using things like SNMP to determine dependencies and so on these devices. Now I will now switch over to a live demo so you could see what the product is like. So let me, hopefully you're able to see this view that I'm showing you here. In fact, let me do it this way. All right. So this is the WhatsUp Gold interface, right? So when you log into WhatsUp Gold, you're going to see this interface. You see Discover, My Network, Analyze, and Settings. Where you want to start is in the Discover area there under New Scan. And this is where you're going to tell WhatsUp Gold what is it that you want to discover. Now, you could easily say, okay, grab this subnet range, or you could give it an IP address, a single IP address, or multiple IP addresses using an IP range. And then you could discover things like your gateway, your local subnets, and so forth. This discovery can expand to your virtual environment, again, Hyper-V or VMware, your wireless infrastructure to include your wireless clients. It also monitors for storage devices like NetApp, Synology, and so on. It will discover those storage devices. Back here on the discovery section, AWS is here, you have Azure, you have Cisco Meraki control devices. So all of these options are available to you for the scan. Step 2 here is very important because as I mentioned, with an IP address, it will discover these environments, but like for some of them, obviously with the cloud and so on, we need to go beyond IP. We'll need means of authenticating. And so you have what are called the credentials library that you'll use, and these will need to be defined prior to running those discovery to get the most out of discovery. So any SNMP credential setup must be added to the credentials library. Same for Windows, for WMI, SSH, VMware, and so on. So these are the credentials library that you'll use and set up with WhatsUp Gold. And then you could have this checkbox say use all current or future, or you could pick specific credentials type, set an order. As you could see here, we have an order that we could use to determine which credentials to use in the discovery. Then you have an options area here. This is pretty much set as it would be used most commonly, but you could adjust how things work. So basically it's set to ping first and then do a credential port connectivity check. So it will go out to those devices in step 1, find those devices through a ping, and after it pings and gets a response, then it will go to step 2 and say, let's interrogate these devices with these credentials to see what type of devices they are and so forth. Any of these scans can be saved and scheduled to be run at a later time. You could set a schedule of when to run and so on, and you will have the options once it's done to email you. Maybe you want to get an email after every scan or every scheduled scan where they'd find a brand new IP address on your network that went online. And so you have this option here available to you. Now, once you discover the devices, what you end up with here is the network. So My Network shows you all your devices that you're monitoring. Something about the licensing here, for every device, it is license-based. So every device is going to be a single licensed device. So if you look at a switch, for example, I'll go to this property. of this switch. Here you'll find that the device, there's going to see a number of monitors here, 107 monitors. So you could add another 107 monitors. It does not change the license because it's still licensed per device, not per monitors. So on a given switch, for example, you could have 200 ports that you're monitoring, for example, and then you could use this information um, to monitor those devices without worrying about licensing and so on. You have also device roles, as you can see here. Now, WhatsUp Go is able to determine what type of devices there are based upon the credentials used. Now, WhatsUp Go comes with a roles library here, and the roles library allows WhatsUp Go, once it interrogates a device, to determine what type of device it is and assign a specific role to the device, and it has monitors assigned automatically. So let's say it discovers something like a firewall, for example. The end user does not have to worry about, okay, well, what is it that we want to monitor on the firewall? The roles library already has the firewall role, and it is already preloaded with a certain set of monitors that you might want to check on a firewall. The port status, bandwidth utilization, and so on. All of that is assigned to these devices on a port level. Now, you also have, as I mentioned in the during the slides, where it will list the layer 2 and show you the layer 2 information. As we zoom in here a bit, you'll begin to notice that those lines actually represent the ports that are connected, and they represent the status. So as we can see up here, that green line indicates a port that's up, that red line indicates a port that's down. So on this Ruckus AP, BR14 is one of the interfaces that's down. So you have that ability here with this tool. As a discovered device, it will show you the layer 2 connectivity, and with layer 2 connectivity, it will also show you what types of devices are connected, what ports are connected, and so on. You have the ability also to track things like interface utilization. So here we're looking at interface utilization in this case. Anything that's a green line indicates usage of bandwidth under 80%. At 80, it changes to yellow. Anything above 90% is going to change to a red line, as we see here. So visually, as you're watching your devices, you can tell if some devices on your network are going to be experiencing high bandwidth utilization. You want to get on top of that before the end users start complaining. But it can give you an idea here. The reason being is that each device that is a network device, let me turn this off, by default is going to be collecting things like bandwidth utilization. So we see there's a performance monitor section here where you could track things like interface utilization on that device. And for each device, you could see, you could go back, this record is here for as long as we go back. So you could see things for yesterday, you could see things for previous month, you could see data for this period. Now, WhatsUp Go has an area here on the system settings where you'll set the data retention on the general settings. So that you could go and adjust the data retention here depending upon the monitor type. So anything that you saw there with interface utilization, for example, is a performance monitor. And then you have things like active monitor and so on. But that's where you'll set the data retention. So maybe you will need to keep your data for a year or maybe 2 years. You could adjust that value there to retain that information for you. WhatsUp Go also will do a layer 2 maps sectioning of your devices. So here it will break the layer 2 maps down to, let's say, cloud infrastructure, or you'll see things like core infrastructure, where we'll look at devices that are more network related. That's the core infrastructure. And you have things like storage, you have virtual machines, you have Windows infrastructure, you have wireless infrastructure. So for every device that it discovered for the layer 2 connectivity, WhatsUp Go will section these devices off for you. You have something called a wireless overlay here, where it will show you connected devices or connected clients. And for each of these, you will see a number here where it's going to give you things like total client information. And based upon that, it will track individual clients that are connected to your wireless devices, show you things like bandwidth consumption, signal strength, etc. You'll be able to get all this information here through the wireless monitoring. Key information here on wireless devices that are connected to your device, to your network. These are not licensed devices, so you could have 200 different clients connected, and it will show you those devices not licensed, but it's just information that we're gathering from the wireless controllers or the access points through SNMP. On the Analyze, this is where you'll go to find different types of reporting. So you have your performance reporting. Here's CPU utilization, for example, where you could go in and you could filter on a specific device to get information. Let's say I wanted to know week to date what this device is, how this device is done CPU wise. You have that information here as well. Real-time performance monitors here. Let's say I want to see in real time what CPU utilization is like. Here's a real-time performance monitor, and it's going to connect right now and track what real-time CPU is like on this particular device I'm looking at here. And then you'll see that data is going to start tracking over here. Now, real time is different than the other report here in the background, in that this report, anytime I run a query here for a specific time frame, it's actually running a SQL query to extract the data from the database. Whereas real-time performance monitor is not extracting data from the database. This is showing me in real time what type of performance we're getting on that device now. And that's not limited to CPU. You could do so for disk utilization, memory utilization, or any performance monitor that we've assigned to the device. You can see in real time what is happening there. And you have CPU, disk, memory. You even have custom monitors. So WhatsUp Gold gives you the ability to monitor a number of custom performance monitor as a depending on the type. So if I were to go into the performance monitor section here, you could create an active script. You could create an APC UPS performance monitor. Obviously, I mentioned you have AWS, Azure, billing, and so on. Performance is there, but you could create a script as a PowerShell script and run it as a performance monitor. SNMP, SQL query, SSH, and of course all of WMI found in Windows, in Windows Perfmon. You could create monitors based upon that information and use the custom performance monitor to track any of those. So as long as it's a numerical value that you could connect to and extract, WhatsUp Gold will give you this information. So in this case, that's interested in Cisco VoIP. I could filter by device. I could say, okay, let's go, week to date as an example, and see what type of performance I've experienced there with VoIP as an example. But keep in mind with performance monitoring, any of those protocols we showed you there earlier, SSH, SQL queries, WMI, as long as you can extract a numerical value, you could create a number of reports that might be useful in your environment. Maybe you wanted to see how memory or how bandwidth and so on is being used on your network. You could use any of those as well. The network area focuses on the network specific type traffic, similarly to the other performance monitors here. You could again drill down to specific device and run query specific to that device, and that data is going to be here. You could extract any of this information. You could export it to PDF, or you could email it as a scheduled export to your email address or the email address of the stakeholders in your organization. Now, beyond that, you have device-specific reports. Let's say you want to run a device uptime report, and to get what's the uptime of specific devices, let's say for previous month. You can run that report. It will put a percentage behind the device's availability. You could do so for all devices, or you can make it specific to a device where you can look at information you're interested in seeing a device uptime. If you want to go deeper, say I want to look at the active monitor availability on the device, again, you could drill down to the active monitor level of the device and see how things have performed, whether it's ping or maybe a specific interface and so on that you're tracking. this report will give you that type of information. And then there are a number of other types of reports here that you could run that are more specific to the health of the devices. The inventory report will give you things like installed software. So part of the discovery process, it will discover what type of software you're running on your systems, or you might be interested in what type of Windows services are running on your devices. You could target specific devices, or it will show you all devices at once to show you what type of services are running on them. An inventory could give you something like device connectivity. So all those layer 2 connectivity devices, connected devices that we see in the map area here in the My Network, the analyze section for connected devices will show you, it's sort of like the spreadsheet behind everything that's connected. And you could use a number of these filters to get real specific. Maybe you want to see just the routers, for example, or maybe you want to just see just Cisco devices. You have the ability to filter on these reports and extract them. And again, all reports are available for export, whether PDF, Excel, which is export data, or scheduled to be sent as an exported document, as a PDF document or Excel. And you have that a bit available to you here in the inventory section. It comes with a tools section as well that you can use for your day-to-day activity in the product. Now, before I leave the report section, I want to go to the dashboard. So dashboards, this is what I was talking about. It comes with some predefined dashboards, but you could create a new dashboard very easily. Just select Empty View or use one of the protocols. When you do so, it will give you the ability to add, using our existing reporting functions, a number of reporting, and you could just simply use any of these available options here and select where you want to add it to column 1, column 2. You could create reports with 5, 6 columns if you wanted to, add it to header, footer, and so on. What will happen there once you do that, these reports, you could define them to say, okay, here I'm looking at a Dell Storage Manager and I'm interested in CPU utilization for today. On the other hand, I'm looking at a custom performance monitor here, and I'm looking at specific information for memory page file percentage. Anytime I go into dashboard, these reports will be already predefined, preloaded. I could do so for things like interface utilization. Remember, the interface utilization report under the main report category, I had to filter for the device, look at a specific time frame, and so on. Whereas in the dashboard, this report is already defined for me, and I have that information here as well. So you could create as many of these dashboards. You could export these dashboards. You could send them to other people as a scheduled export as well, or you could share them with other users in WhatsUp Gold. So you have the ability to customize. They're very easy to customize. It's just drag and drop, select the options that you want, they're available, and then you'll be able to see these dashboards defined for you. And you could do things like show a map view, as I'm showing here, or maybe looking at specific interfaces that you want to track information on. There's real-time performance monitor I'm using here as well. So you could get really creative there with the existing data there for dashboards. Now, under settings, this is where you'll define all your monitors. So as I mentioned earlier, you have 3 types of monitor: active, passive, and performance. Using the active monitor, you could create monitors to check for the status. Maybe it's a ping monitor, HTTP content. You want to do things like SSL certificates and so on. WhatsUp Gold has the ability to track information like this to tell you, for example, if the certificates are about to expire. And you could leverage WhatsUp Gold for that type of monitoring. So it's not just a ping tool. You could use WhatsUp Gold to see when a certificate is about to expire, or maybe you're interested in monitoring a file or folder monitor. The folder monitor is going to show me, for example, what's the size of a folder, or what is the size of a network share. So you can look at WhatsUp Gold, take any of these available monitors and define them. Maybe you're interested in a service monitor to see what type of services is running on the device and the status of those services. And you could leverage WhatsUp Gold for that. And you could even restart a service using this method. So if I were to go into the DNS client service here, you'll notice there's a restart on failure. You have the option to restart any service that you're monitoring, and you have SNMP and WMI as an option there to monitor any of those devices. So it's the options that's available to you to monitor is unlimited, basically, using any of the available protocols. You can run a SQL query. In this case, I'm looking at a SQL query for failed jobs. And beyond that, you could use different types of SQL Server. You could maybe run something in Oracle. You have the ability to do so as well. So there's quite a few options that you have available. Now, the other monitor type is passive. One of the important things is tracking things like Windows events. Let's say you want to track all your security events. WhatsUp Gold could listen for those events and alert on them for you. You could also do things like syslog and SNMP trap. So these are events that they're called passive because WhatsUp Gold is not actively polling these, but it's going to passively listen for them, and when they are triggered, WhatsUp Gold will then generate an alert and alert you on those. So yeah, it's quite a few options that you have available to you for various monitoring types in WhatsUp Gold. Now, we discussed things like application monitoring. So the APM monitor will look at application profiles. WhatsUp Gold comes preloaded with these, and using these application profiles, you could define monitors to look specifically at the application. So we're not looking at whether the server is up and running. So if I were to take Active Directory Controller here, for example, each profile, it comes with a components list, and in the components list, there's several components already preloaded and defined for you that we could track. So you have this here. So what we're doing in this instance, we're not just checking one part of the application, is the service running as an example, but we're looking at various services, various metrics in WMI, and based upon that, we're going to give you a comprehensive view of that application to tell you how it's performed over the time. And you have things like, and what you're seeing here are preloaded for you. Now, we do have an application profile library online in the Ipswitch community or the WhatsUp Gold community, where you could download any a number of other application profiles. But these are preloaded for you to look at various things that you can monitor with your devices. On your devices. The other thing that you have is network traffic analysis. This allows you to use NetFlow data to look at traffic patterns, types of traffics, what cities are we communicating with on your network, where's most of the data coming from. So it's not just looking at your bandwidth and traffic information, but as you dig deeper, you could tell what type of information it is that they're tracking. So who are the devices on your network that are consuming the most bandwidth? Who are the top talkers? Who are the devices that with the most conversation partners and so on. So in this case, for example, I could see, for example, who is on Netflix right now on my network. So I could filter to include just the Netflix domain. And based upon this, I'll be able to see based upon the IP addresses I find here. Let me enable the IP address, sender IP address here. And I can look at IP addresses here and determine who are on Netflix, because based upon this filter, every piece of data that I see here is related to Netflix data. So you have the ability to see what domains people are going on, what type of traffic consumption they're using, and all of these are thresholds can be alerted on. So you could set threshold alerts on them. So if, let's say, a specific user exceeds a certain threshold of data, you could set up alerting on this using the traffic analysis view. Suspicious connection is a nice one. It uses Tor to detect any access to what's considered a dark web. So it has the existing Tor value, where here we could set the Tor IP reputation library, where it goes out and it checks to make sure that it's up to date. And using this information, it'll be able to keep abreast of anything that's considered the dark web and alert you on those. Finally, I want to talk about the config management tools. So as I mentioned, WhatsUp Gold has predefined configuration to back up your devices, your device configuration, as well as not only device configuration, but you can run tasks with this tool. Let's say you want to push out firmware updates, you want to change passwords, and as you can see here, as I mentioned, it's vendor agnostic. We have a number of vendors already here in the library predefined for you. And using this information, we could then set up, there's a policy library here as well, as I mentioned, where you could check, audit your devices to see if they comply. And it's just a simple matter of setting up a task to run against your devices. So let's say we want to back up all your startup configurations on your devices. You could determine the task, choose the task from the script library, and assign them to your devices that you want to run this task against. There's a threshold here that you will enable to determine if it detects any config changes, if it failed to run. If you want to do a policy audit, you could select the policy from this list and say, run this policy audit on the device whenever you run this task based upon whatever schedule that you set. And that is it. And that will then run against your devices. Under Analyze is where you'll see the reporting. It will see the archives of the configurations. WhatsUp Gold keeps these archives in the SQL database. It is encrypted. But that is where it will keep the backup of the configurations. You could do a start versus run configuration comparison to see what devices, whether any differences were found in the configurations during the backups. If it finds a new configuration change, it will make a backup of that configuration for you, and then you'll be able to do a comparison to see whether it what those changes are. So if I look at differences, for example, you can see where in the config there are differences on your devices. You could compare with multiple devices, so it's not the same device. You could compare multiple devices if you wanted to. Everything that we saw here, you could set alerts on. Now, it's good, you want to be able to not only monitor your discovered network, but you could set up alerting on your devices as well. And so with this, you could use a number of the action library here for you, whether it's Slack, email, or maybe something self-healing. Maybe you want to restart a service or run a PowerShell action or some sort. But WhatsUp Gold action library is a wide array of them that you could use to not only notify you, but run what I consider self-healing type actions as well to mitigate whatever the issue is that you're reporting on. And so you have a number of alerts options for you. If you're using things like ServiceNow or OpsGenie, those come already preloaded for you. And using this library, you could then define the policies. You have policies where it could go to specific devices, specific users at certain times. Maybe you have a blackout period where you don't want to be alerted. You have all these available to you in this in the action policy segment of the product. So, and with that, I'm going to bring this part to an end, and I want to turn it over. Well, I want to just get over to the Q&A section to see if there are any questions that we can answer for you.
Great, thanks, Mark. Yeah, we've gotten quite a few questions throughout the duration of the webinar, so I'll go ahead and get started. But if you have further questions, as a reminder, the questions panel is on the right-hand side of your screen. You mentioned that WhatsUp Gold is vendor agnostic, so I assume it can monitor all different companies like Cisco Meraki, and beyond.
Yeah, that's correct. So again, just to go back to the most basic level, if it has an IP address that could be pinged, WhatsUp Gold can monitor that. And then beyond that, most of these devices, HP, Dell, you name it, they use protocols like SNMP to where we could dig deeper into monitoring those devices for specific metrics.
Great. Is wireless monitoring an add-on for WhatsUp Gold?
No. So WhatsUp Gold, wireless monitoring is part of the standard features of WhatsUp Gold. And again, it uses SNMP to discover your wireless infrastructure. But yeah, that is standard.
Great. And given a lot of, working from home, and there's a lot of different things going on in the world right now, how easy is it to set up a voice over IP configuration obviously knowing that VoIP is part of Cisco and we can monitor for it, but how easy is that to set up?
Yeah, so WhatsUp Gold has an actual wizard, a VoIP wizard to set that up for you. So all you'll need to do in WhatsUp Gold is launch the WhatsUp Gold admin console, and you'll see the option called a VoIP wizard. And what it will do, it will allow you to select the devices, the VoIP devices, and with that, it will just simply start adding the VoIP monitors for you so you can track that type of information. So yes, it comes with a nice, easy to use. And the thing with WhatsUp Gold, especially as it's deployed in combat situation and so forth, you have a rotation of end users, soldiers, salesmen, and so on that go through there. It's very easy to use and set up, so there's not a lot of learning curve to deal with and complicated steps and or knowledge transfer. Lots of wizards involved in it to help you get up in monitoring.
Great. Those are all the questions we had today. So I wanted to say thank you, Mark, for that great presentation, and thank you, everyone who joined us today. As a reminder, we will be sharing this recording and will be made available within 24 hours of this webinar concluding. Have a great day and stay healthy. Thank you.